I'm Ginny with Ginny Panur, and this is Who Do You Know? And I love to feature small business owners. And today I'm really excited to share with you two people that I met on LinkedIn, Rod and Inci Jones. The story behind them is that they are co-host of the Thought Row podcast, where they celebrate what people love to do creatively by giving them a voice. And I just think that is so cool that you're pulling people out who haven't told their story. And that leads me to, can you give us some of your story?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to. But I want to first say that both Inci and I are way more commonly asked the questions than have the questions asked of us.
So this is a turn.
It's a turnaround for us.
Oh, so paybacks, right?
Yeah. But we appreciate you, and we appreciate you having us on your program. We're pretty excited about what you're doing. And of course, we're excited about what we've been doing over the past decade or two or three or four. It's been quite some time.
How has it evolved? Because I know a little bit of your background where there's been photography and modeling. And how did you get into these podcasts and the creativity of other people?
Well, first it goes back to when Inci and I first met. I was a commercial photographer in San Diego, and one of the agencies sent her over for a go-see, as they call it, and maybe for her to pick up some portfolio photographs, but also I had a couple assignments that were scheduled, and she was going to be the right person for this particular assignment. But what was interesting is two agencies actually referred her to me. And in both cases, they said, we think that this is going to be the woman of your life, somebody who you're going to want to spend your life with. And I was kind of surprised that they said that, because they've never, ever said anything like that before.
Yeah, that was kind of unusual, because I know that when I was talking with my agent and they would send me out on go-sees to get pictures and meet different photographers, and they never had said that to me. And they're like, oh, I think you're really gonna love this guy. He's fabulous, and you guys are gonna hit it off. You're gonna get along.
Yeah. And you're going, oh, sure. Both of you are saying, yeah, right.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, that's nice. I didn't really pay much attention to it at the time. I just thought, okay, great, he's gonna be a nice guy, yay.
Right, yeah.
I don't think either one of us so as we met each other for the first time, I don't think either one of us said, oh, love at first sight, this is absolutely it, this is who I want to be with. I think it took, what, a year and a half or so?
It took about a year.
About a year.
Right, about a year, yeah. We really hit it off as friends, and we would have very long conversations on the phone. And it just evolved from there.
From then on, we ran the photography studio for about 20 years. And then things in the photography business kind of started to slow down. The pay rates were starting to drop. We opened a second studio in Los Angeles, which helped out for a while. And then at some point, I decided I didn't want to do this anymore. Inci was actively involved in the business with me. And about that time, she became pregnant with our daughter. And so at that point, we kind of shifted gears and started marketing and consulting. So we ended up consulting for a variety of companies, mostly in the health and nutrition area. And we ended up doing TV because of our background in photography and production and creativity. We ended up doing infomercials, direct response TV programs. And that was pretty exciting. We got to meet a lot of interesting people. And then from there, we consulted for every bit of 15 years. And actually, we still do some consulting.
We do some still. But yeah, it was for quite some time, and launched a lot of really wonderful products that helped a lot of people. So, it was very fulfilling that way, where we knew that the products that we launched were good for someone. It wasn't just a product.
We weren't trying to sell another kitchen utensil.
Oh.
Although I like those.
I know you like them.
Those are my thing.
It depends on what avenue you want to take. But what's interesting here that I want to point out to people, especially small business owners or wannabe entrepreneur, if they would just notice what the two of you are saying about how you pivot in from one position to another position, and being in a small business and knowing that it's time to look at something else is so important for people to realize.
We both agree on that one. And I
Yeah.
have to tell you that sometimes the door gets slammed in your face. I mean, when photography started, it wasn't as lucrative as it was. It's becoming more and more difficult for us to pay our bills. And then at that point, we had to come up with another solution. Because we had such a background in creative services, it seemed to make sense to do some consulting. And we made that shift. It didn't happen overnight. I think it took a few months before we actually landed a client. And then once we had one, we started to develop a reputation, and then more and more people started to hire us. So that worked out pretty well. But I think, you know, all entrepreneurs need to understand that everything has a lifespan. And yes, you want to stick to it. You want to be totally focused. You want to put lots of energy in it. And of course, you don't want to give up. But there is a time when I think the cosmos is telling you, hey, man, it's time for you to move on. And I think
you're getting it assisted to move to another direction, and you can't be very stagnant and stay in the position just because you're just going to make it work. Sometimes you need to move on and progress.
Right. Had you set a timeline, or it's just that that's kind of how it happened for you, that all of a sudden new doors were opening?
The door was closing rather quickly, and we could see it. In fact, it slammed on us pretty hard in my thinking. And the transition was do it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that we really had a choice. I mean, it was like things were kind of getting slow and not happening, and then these other opportunities were presenting itself. So
and I think we quickly learned to take it. You know, we got out the proverbial yellow pad and we sat down and say, okay, well, what are we really good at? And then we both came to the conclusion that creativity was something that we were both very good at, and we could talk the talk, and we were both interested in health and nutrition. So that kind of one thing led to another. So when we got in conversations, we went to the trade shows. What's it called? Expo West, the famous nutrition show. And we met people there, and they understood that we knew what we were talking about, and they needed advertising and marketing. And that's how it evolved. But the transition wasn't taken lightly, in as much as we really wanted to make sure we were using our skill set, things that we had learned over the years.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely right.
And also passion, most likely. Where was your passion going to drive you to?
Yeah, well, obviously we wanted to stay creative. I mean, that was something that we both wanted to do. And as time went on, because that business was functioning quite well up until, 2 years ago, when things kind of changed in the world. But all along, we both started to paint. We're both artists. We both paint. In fact, instead of being in our podcast room right now, we're talking to you from one of our studios. And the transition of going from photographer to consultant, and then along the way developing our own personal creativity as far as painting. And then that also gave us an opportunity to start marketing our artwork, build our presence on social media. Both of us have pretty strong presence on social media, which ironically or interestingly enough, that kind of led us to the podcast.
So the art, I think I went on your website and saw some of the art that you do, and don't you name them? Each piece has a
absolutely.
theme.
Yeah, they all have a title, and sometimes Rod will write a story or thoughts about the painting, or what or not the painting, just a story in itself. So it becomes kind of like an art installation for Rod on his website, and you get like a true art experience when you go to his site and read it.
Yeah, so the stories don't always directly relate to the painting,
not all the time.
But it seems to work and it's interesting and people find it interesting. Sometimes they'll not pay too much attention to the art. They're more interested in the story. Other times they're not so happy about the story and they pay more attention to the art. So it's kind of an interesting thing that's happening there.
That's
Well,
true.
an awful lot of people are visual, I think. And so that's how you can draw their attention to the story, and they can go as far into the story as they want.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point.
Tell us how that went from that into the podcast.
Well, I think both Inci and I were sitting around and we're thinking about this. I had this idea in the back of my head that I wanted to do a podcast, but I can't say that I knew a lot about it. In fact, I don't even think I'd ever listened to a podcast, but I read enough about it to think, hey, this could be a really good thing for us. So we both, we sat down, we talked about it and said, does this take advantage of all of our skills? And it appeared that it was going to, and it did. And then, as you pointed out in the beginning of the show, our whole thrust was to give other creative people a voice. And it's turned out to be a great thing. We're on episode...
I think we're at episode 38, I believe, right now. So
we'll be celebrating our 39th birthday.
Soon.
Oh,
It's weekly. It's a
weekly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I listened to one of them and it was an English, either model or face.
Oh, makeup artist.
She's a makeup artist. Yeah.
Makeup artist.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll talk about some of the guests that we've had.
Oh, well, we've had painters and we've had people that are musicians. A flutist. We're going to be having a violin maker coming up pretty soon. We're going to have an archaeologist coming up pretty soon.
This Thursday.
In fact, that's this Thursday's episode. So we really,
episode,
we launch it on Friday officially. But
Okay.
that way, creativity is so many different things. It's not just art necessarily.
We had an opera singer, and then we had a woman that calls herself Barbie the welder, and she sculpts people and artwork out of metal, and she's fascinating. She's a very interesting personality. But it's been it's been really fun for us because these people are all over the world. I mean, we've been talking to people from pretty remote areas actually. But the interesting thing, as you know, and as you're experiencing right now on your YouTube channel, you could communicate with a lot of people around the world. There's some fascinating and very, very creative people in this world. And both Inci and I have just been excited that we've had the opportunity to talk with them. It's improved our creativity, I think, but we also gave them a voice. And it was exciting for them and for us.
Well, this is exciting because basically this is about who do you know and networking and connecting with people. So how do you do your networking and how are you finding these creative people?
Well,
these are very unusual.
Well, mostly because because of our art and especially like Instagram is very visual. So we have the opportunity to see people that are creative. And interestingly enough, we're now to the point where people reach out to us. In the beginning, I both Inci and I would reach out to them and say, hey, we think you would be a great guest on our podcast. And then some people were a little leery. They go, well, who are you and why should we? But then we'd invite them to listen to a couple of our podcasts. They went to our website. We're very, very professional in the way we present ourselves, which is critical. And then one by one, they started to agree. And then it's now to the point where people actually reach out to us. We're pretty excited about that.
Oh, that's fabulous. I did see your website, the Thought Row Podcast. Did you have to have a CPA when you started out, or were you concerned about finances when you first started?
I don't know any small business or large business for that matter that is not concerned about finances. However, no, we did not have a CPA. We did have an accountant, somebody that we knew for several years, and we actually used him for 15 years or so. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he was somebody who gave us advice periodically. When we got into business contracts, when in the consulting area, periodically we would work with an attorney, usually on the client side.
Okay.
But generally, no, I think we did everything pretty much ourselves. But running a photography studio, you pretty much knew how to run a business anyway. Not in the beginning, though, I have to tell you, there's a lot of trials and tribulations there. But it became very, very successful, had large studios and had big clients. But you pointed out something that I think is really valid, and why it's so important. What you're doing with your show is very important. You're giving entrepreneurs an opportunity to hear what other entrepreneurs have to say, because all too often we feel like we're a committee of one, right? We're sitting at our
Yes.
desk, our phone, and
Yes.
we're going, oh man, I don't know how to think about this or what to do. And it can be confusing, it can be daunting, it can be overwhelming, especially if the checkbook ain't balancing out correctly. And I don't
It's a
know.
little isolating too. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
when you
please.
start, when you are starting out, it seems like you're, like Rod said, a committee of one, or maybe you have a spouse that's working with you, or one other person. But after that, your world ends up being very isolating unless you make an effort to not isolate yourself and just be in your head all the time about your business. I think that's really
Right.
important.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing that both Inci and I are very fortunate is we're husband and wife, but we're also business partners, and we also get along really well. You know,
Oh.
now, do we have our arguments? Yeah, for sure. We're like any other normal couple.
Normal, yeah.
But 99.9% of the time, we're pulling on the rope together, and that's really helpful. And some
Yes.
businesses, you know, you have a partner and you both work as a team and make things happen. And I think that's kind of important too. But there are a lot of entrepreneurs in this world right now that are solo. You know, they
Yes.
get up every morning, they have their computer set up in their bedroom, they're living in an apartment, and they're making things happen. And
Right.
that's really important, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
It really is.
Well, I love what you're doing, bringing out creativity of very unusual people. I love unusual businesses such as yours. But you are going to the extra depth of some of these welders and different artists.
Well, we have a gentleman we spoke to in Singapore who, we can't mention the company that he personally works for,
Yeah.
but he is the guy, we think he's very creative because he is the guy who does the flavoring and the formulating.
And the food engineering. He engineers food, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All sorts of chemicals.
Well, no chemicals. They specialize in, what is that called, protein?
They do proteins that are not animal proteins, but it's not the typical soy protein. They use all different kinds of things. I think one was they use fungi, and then when you go to eat it, because they flavor it so accurately, you would swear you were eating a piece of meat. So,
really?
yeah.
Oh, that's got to be fascinating. You'll have so much fun with that.
We enjoyed our chat with him, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was very
and it was very informative.
Yeah.
And also it kind of made us think more about, because he approaches from a nutritional and healthy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. And that's another thing that's important for entrepreneurs to know, is they need to keep up on their health.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yes. That's
Very
the most
important.
important thing,
Yeah.
really.
Besides
Yeah.
your passion. Your passion will
And
take you
also
forward.
be aware of your time. I think time is that your health and time are the two most valuable things that you have. And if you
Right.
don't manage either one of them very well, your success rate is probably going to go down by 50% at that point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would love to tell entrepreneurs?
It always gets down to believing in yourself. Don't listen to what other people have to say. If you have a well-meaning parent, family member, business associate, somebody that you went to school with that gets real negative on you, move on.
Yeah.
Just
Good.
don't listen to them. Don't let anybody spoil your dream, because there's a reason that you have that dream inside you. I think
love
that
it.
there's something really special going on inside. And if you have that dream, then that's your dream. You're meant to have that dream, and don't let anybody else spoil it.
So true.
We are in our podcast studio. And in fact, we're going to do a little video of it today. And in that podcast studio, we have all of our equipment, all of our gear, our microphones and all that. Inci and I sit across from each other, and we have our script, we have our iPads in front of us, so we have a little bit of script to follow. We provide all our guests with pretty extensive questions so they know basically what we're going to ask them, and then we do follow-ups. And then once we have that show produced, it's edited, and then it's distributed on all formats like
Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. Gosh, I think there's at least 15 or 20 different places that it's distributed.
So it's literally available everywhere. We're just now starting to put them on YouTube.
Well, the two of you have a beautiful rapport for your
you.
podcast. Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if you liked that episode, you might want to listen to the one coming up this week, because the archaeologist, she was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, she's a professor at UCLA, and she was a little bashful about this.
Yeah.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
At first.
But once she opened up, she was fascinating. I mean, we learned things that we never even thought we would learn on a podcast. It was very, very interesting.
I'd love to see this country back with more entrepreneurs. You know, the statistics are that back in the 70s, there were almost 80% small business people. Now we're down to 40% or less. And my thought is, that's what I keep leaning toward, is how can I get the message out there to let people know that a lot of people have done it. It may be risky, it's not easy, but man, the rewards are out of this world. And people like you getting the message out that, you know, if I ask the right questions of you, then they can start to hear that it's possible, you know, and that will give them faith that they can do it too.
People have become very good on computers and being entrepreneurial on computers and selling products and things like that. But a lot of people are looking at two things. They're looking at a $16 an hour job at a fast food joint, or building something that could last for, even be handed down to their children and their grandchildren. All the great businesses in this, or many of the great businesses in this country, started out with a guy and a dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. You look at Fuller Brush, and he was walking around in the middle of the night trying to raise money in Chicago, I believe, and there was one light on in one building, and he went and got on the elevator, went up to that floor, figured out which room it was, knocked on the door. The guy said, "Come on in." And first thing the Fuller said to him is, "I'm trying to raise money for my business." And the guy goes, "How the heck did you end up on my door?" And what was really interesting, he said, "Because you're the only one that had a light on, and I figure you were pretty entrepreneurial yourself," although they didn't use the term at the time. But in essence, what he's saying, if you had your light on in the middle of the night, you're a real, you're a guy who's trying to make something happen. And I want to tell you what I'm doing. And that guy was his first investor.
Is that right? Yeah.
So as you develop your show and you start talking to more and more people, you're going to hear more stories like that.
Right.
Well, I was at a gas station, and I mentioned something to the guy who was pumping gas on the other side, and he said, "Oh yeah, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm doing this." "Oh yeah, I do this." And then the next thing, if you have a minute, I'm going to tell you one more quick story. This one will blow you away a little bit. When I started to build my photography business, I didn't go to photography school, and I didn't have any real background in business, but I was very good at selling. And I was living in a trailer, a fifth wheel trailer, and I did some work for the California Division of Forestry to pick up some money. And I was building my photography career. There was a laundromat that I went to, that I used to go to all the time to do my laundry. I was doing the laundry, and one of the machines got jammed. And the guy came over, and I said, "This machine is messed up." And he said, "Well, let me take a look at it." This guy about my age. And so we started talking, and he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a photographer." which is kind of a reach at that point. And
Yeah.
I said, what do you do? He said, I just graduated from Art Center in photography. And I have this really nice studio, but I don't know how to get business. I don't know anything about business. And I go, hey, I know how to get us business. I'll get us clients. We became partners, and that's what started my business. Later on, he inherited a bunch of money and didn't want to do that anymore. His mother was married to Saul Price, who started Price Clubs, and he kind of went a different direction. But that's what got me completely, fully operational photography studio, was because of this guy.
Wow. What a story.
I know, would you, in a laundromat. And
Yeah.
because what was really funny is he says, yeah, I'm a photographer. And he goes, and that's why I'm trying to get this old bra strap out of this dryer, because this is what I do.
So crazy, right?
Yeah.
So crazy.
That's a good one. That is too precious.
Yeah, well, there's another one that follows up with that. When I wanted to move out of the trailer, I wanted to rent an apartment. There was this old Victorian house in downtown San Diego. And I saw that there was it was a rent, it was split. So I went in there, I knocked on the door, and the door was open, and I walked in, and I said, hey, is anybody here? A guy said, yeah, I'm back here. And so there was a guy in army fatigues scrubbing the toilet back there. And I said, hey, I'm interested in renting this. He said, yeah, okay, great. He said, what do you do for a living? You want to know if I had any kind of income, of course.
Yeah.
And he was managing the property. And he said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a photographer. I said, what do you do? His name was Roy Robinson. He said, I'm a photographer too. That's why I'm here scrubbing this toilet. But what's interesting, he was a very successful public relations photographer in San Diego. I ended up living next to him in this duplex.
Yeah.
We became the best friends ever. He opened up a lot of doors for me and helped me build my business.
How amazing.
Yeah.
When you're ready for the doors, they open.
Yeah.
You just have to be aware of it.
Yes, I think you're right. That's all that it is. Yeah.
Yeah, keep
Right.
your radio dial tuned into the right station, and the right things will happen.
Yep. And it's a lot of mind focus, mindset, that you know that this is the right path for you.
Yeah, and that's what Inci and I felt about the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so
Hey,
much.
all
Really
right,
have
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Okay,
right.
all right, bye-bye.
Bye.